The words that come to mind when thinking of Pam Dunn are leadership, listening, compassion, and grace. I have often said, and I will continue to say, that Pam deserves the Nobel Peace Prize for the work that she does and the impact of her work in people's lives, including mine. She is the CEO of Your Infinite Life Training and Coaching Company, as well as the founder of the Peaceful Project. Pam is talking today about self-care. She's taking it way beyond a cup of tea or a bubble bath. In her talk, A Cup of Tea Isn't Enough, Embracing the 4 Pillars of Self-Care. Please welcome Pam Dunn.
Thank you so much, Maggie. That was an amazing introduction. And thank you to all the other speakers. I've enjoyed them so much and took so many notes. So I'm going to start out by saying a good way to take care of yourself is to find a Maggie in your life and to listen to those other speakers. And I also have some tips as well. So given all that has occurred since March of 2020, 17 months ago, we are experiencing stressors that we have not experienced before. So doesn't it make sense that if you haven't already reached a stress threshold, that you will soon? Because we're immersed in it, and so is everyone else, we will tend to be dismissive, and we could even be overly dramatic about what's going on. Either way, though, that's not dealing with what we need to deal with in order to expand our threshold. And I'm going to tell you that there is no scented candle or cup of tea in the world that will make your burnout or your stress go away in a sustainable way. You know, a symptom also, so that all of you are aware of reaching your threshold, is going to be stress, feeling that sense of stress. It's going to be worry, anxiousness, panic attacks, irritability, trying to control everything, so much more. All of those symptoms exacerbate the problem and then distort our reality. We must be aware of these and never let the discouragement take the lead. And it also doesn't mean that you need to suck it up better or fall into resignation. Those are also coping skills. These unprecedented times call for unprecedented self-care. Not the self-care of a spa day, a bubble bath, candy, or a bottle of wine. Self-care that is nourishing and gives us room to expand our threshold, because that's what we must do. In my coaching, I found that I needed not only to develop these nuanced ways of taking care of myself, for myself, I also needed to investigate and find these for my clients, a new way to serve. Because when people feel better, they do better. And sometimes we don't have those types of answers until we need them. And this was a time, and is still a time, that we need them. So I say, begin to look at self-care from a holistic approach, taking care of yourself mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. So let me explain them, and then I'll go into detail. And by the way, please download your program notes, because all of these tips are in there. Okay, so mental self-care means that that's about how your thinking affects your well-being. Emotional self-care is how your feelings affect your well-being. Spiritual is how your beliefs affect your well-being. And then finally, physical is simply and profoundly radical self-love of your body. And that's going to be through rest, food, and movement. And I'm going to talk about that. So here are the answers to these questions about how to take care of yourself from a holistic approach. And I'm going to start with mental self-care and just read just a little excerpt from something called The Wolves Within by David Griffith. A young boy asked his grandfather, "It is as if there are 2 wolves inside me. One is good and does no harm, He lives in harmony with those around him and does not take offense when no offense was intended. He will only fight when it is right to do so and without discouraging others. He seems confident and in charge of his life. But the other wolf, he is full of anger. The littlest thing will set him into a fit of temper. He fights and discourages. He cannot think clearly because of his anger. He constantly reminds me how I'm not doing it well or correctly or not doing enough. It is hard to live with these two wolves inside me, for both of them try to dominate my spirit. Well, the boy looked intently into his grandfather's eyes and asked, "Which one wins, grandfather?" The grandfather solemnly answered, "The one I feed." So you see, mental self-care, I want you to know we have 50 to 75,000 thoughts in a day. It is impossible to try and control your thinking. And so it's important not to glorify your thinking either, but rather learn how to start letting it go. I also say, don't turn around a negative thought. Don't substitute a negative or discouraging thought. Just let it go. It's just a thought. If you begin to see it like that, I promise you, you're not going to run out of thoughts. There'll be lots. You know, the other thing that's important about this is that wisdom that knows how to take care of ourselves and knows what we need comes from a deep place inside of you and not from your intellect. It doesn't come from your thinking. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself spiritually, because your mental self-care will be easier and graceful. And that's why I mean it's a holistic approach. You want to understand each concept, and we'll go over those. So hopefully you're beginning to see that those bubble baths, that wine, that good cup of tea, all of those, you're trying to free your mind. Isn't it true that during a bubble bath for just maybe a short period of time, you stop thinking about what you're stressed about? So how about taking on mental self-care as a holistic approach and focus on freeing your mind, even without the cup of tea, even during a stressful moment? Okay, so next is emotional self-care. This is my favorite and my wheelhouse, and that is understanding feelings. Feelings are an inside-out process. So, for example, the stress isn't what is making you feel a certain way. You're causing, or those feelings are occurring because of your thoughts about the stress. So I like to talk about feelings from the perspective of this slide that I'm showing you. We have 5 basic feelings: mad, sad, afraid, hurt, and happy. Every other feeling is a derivative of one of those. If you're frustrated, you could be mad. If you're anxious, it could be afraid. So the important part is that no feeling is good or bad, right or wrong. They all have a purpose. So when you learn to understand that feelings are energy, or as a quote I have heard, feelings are visitors, they come and go. So let's make sure they don't wear out their welcome by keeping them around too long. So it's really important to let those feelings move through and out. And again, this slide here is in your download. So the thing that I said earlier about feelings have a purpose, this is what this document is. So if you let yourself feel mad all the way through and out, rather than feeling the stress of mad, if you just let that feeling move, this feeling on the other side is the inner strength that allows you to ask for what you want, to know what you want, to set boundaries, to say no when you mean no. Very important. Sad, as Micah talked about earlier in her conversation about grief, This is really important because sad lets you know, number one, that you care, and also what you care about. Afraid, I think that this is important, and definitely Dr. Lisa Damore is an expert on the concepts of anxiety. But also what happens in afraid is that courage is born. When we feel afraid and we let ourselves experience that, courage is born, and then our inner wisdom can tell us and show us and guide us on what we want to do next. The feeling of hurt, that feeling is challenging at times, because when we feel hurt by somebody we care about or by certain situations, we often want to go to the other person or situation and make sure that that never happens again. However, you don't want to skip the part that says that you're listening and acknowledging and affirming your own hurt. Because when you do that, you are saying, I love you to you. So remember that also happy isn't something that is the only good feeling. Happy lets you know that gratitude, appreciation, joy reside within you. And you can experience that whenever you choose. So feelings are an important thing that you allow yourself to learn how to manage and learn to understand. So are you engaging in the feeling of your thinking? That's a good thing to understand, and then let that feeling move through. I love what Morgan said about having somebody to witness and hold space for you. I love what Dr. Lisa Damore talked about understanding and managing anxiety. Those are all important ways to take care of yourself emotionally. Sometimes it's not emotional self-care to run from what you're feeling and to use a bubble bath as an excuse. Self-care means you move through something. Okay, so now let's talk about spiritual self-care. This is your beliefs. And often different things that occur with stressors really flush out or expose those limiting beliefs. And spiritual self-care is also about something, thinking about and focusing on something greater or bigger than you, like love. What would love do? And many of us have, take care of ourselves spiritually through our religion, through our spirituality. But I'm going to focus on beliefs. And the first thing that I always use and find the most helpful is the I am statement. This is an opportunity to take a character trait and say that character trait to yourself. So one of the things I'll do is ask myself, what do I need from the I am statement? And sometimes it's for me to say to myself, I am doing a great job, even when it doesn't feel that way. And if I'm having a challenging day, I can say that over and over again. And you know what happens? I start looking for where I am doing a great job, rather than focusing on what isn't going well. And sometimes what I'm thinking, remember, keep that in mind, what I'm thinking isn't accurate. So the I am statement, listen to yourself talk, beating yourself up. That's not self-care. Comparing. If you're comparing yourself to somebody else, you may be diminishing your self-care. Don't ask questions like, why am I not doing better? Why am I not doing enough? Why is it going this way? Why is this taking so long? You see, that keeps us in the spiral of why the problem is what it is. Use the I am statement to help take yourself out of that, or ask, what do I need? How will I get there? One of my favorite suggestions is every morning, tell yourself 3 things you love about yourself. And in the evening, 3 things you appreciate about yourself that you did that day. Surrender to what you want and let go of everything in the way. And now let's talk about physical self-care. Because honestly, this is about loving your body radically, because this is the house you live in to express yourself. So feed it well, move it, get rest regularly. Now, small measures, because sometimes we can't accomplish all of that, but paying attention to small measures make big changes. I love James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. And he says, we don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our system. So make sure you have a good system in place, a system that allows you to rest, to move your body, to feed it in a way that is helpful and encouraging and sustaining to you. And begin to see yourself as someone who does that. I used to live from the perspective, without realizing it, by the way, that I was somebody who pushed my body to limits that it didn't deserve, to not get the rest I needed because that meant something better about me. But as they tell you in the airplane, it is important to put your own mask on before someone else. So you can simultaneously take care of yourself and take care of others. Be in charge rather than in control. And that means taking action on what you can do. And another thing is support. When you're feeling stressed or at your threshold, get support from someone that will help you move out of the stress, not validate the stress. And always, and in all ways, remind yourself that you can handle whatever occurs. You always have, and you always will. So let me end with another favorite story. It's called The Trouble Tree. I hired a plumber to help me restore an old farmhouse. And after he had just finished a rough first day on the job, a flat tire made him lose an hour of work, his electric drill quit, and his ancient 1-ton truck refused to start. While I drove him home, he sat in stony silence. On arriving, he invited me in to meet his family. As we walked toward the front door, he paused briefly at a small tree, touching the tips of the branches with both hands. When opening the door, he underwent an amazing transformation. His face was wrapped in smiles, and he hugged his 2 small children and gave his wife a kiss. Afterward, he walked me to the car. We passed the tree, and my curiosity got the better of me. I asked him about what I had seen him do earlier. "Oh, that's my trouble tree," he replied. "I know I can't help having troubles on the job, but one thing's for sure. Those troubles don't belong in the house with my wife and the children. So I just hang them up on the tree every night when I come home and ask God to take care of them. Then in the morning, I pick them up again." Funny thing, he smiled, when I come out in the morning and pick them up, there aren't nearly as many as I remember hanging the night before. So let your self-care be that tree. Make the assessment in the moment, or be proactive about taking care of yourself mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And at www.yourinfinitelifeonline.com, we have lots of options of how to take care of yourself, anywhere from coaching to courses. Thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity, Maggie.
Thank you so very much, Pam. You've wrapped up our day by bringing us home to ourselves. and the immense importance and value for caring for our spiritual, physical, emotional, and mental selves. It's through our guide that our children learn to take care of themselves.